On today's episode with Coffee with Khaldor, we actually have the Duck in an interview. So, QuackNiix, former member of Fnatic, and the kind of infamous iteration of Fnatic that was able to not only take down MVP Black at the end of BlizzCon 2016, but then also claimed the mid-season Brawl champion against Dignitas in an absolutely fantastic best of 7 in Sweden. So we're going to talk to him about Quack. By now, of course, retired from the pro scene and started to switch over into becoming a full-time streamer, or at least giving it a shot. And we're going to talk about all these things, how he started with esports, how he now transitions out of it again, a little bit of the experience during all that time, and of course also what he plans to do in the future. So enjoy the interview with QuackNiix. Okay, everybody, I'm here with the Duck himself, with QuackNiix right now. So how you doing, dude?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. So the first thing that I have to immediately talk about is so what happened right as we started this whole thing is that QuackNiix decided that he needed to freshen his hair up. Is that a Swedish thing, by the way?
No, but I just recently, a few days ago, I started fixing my hair, and when I turned on my stream, everybody was like, "Oh my lord, you look so handsome!" So I'm like, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna start fixing my hair every day."
Okay, fair enough. So I actually don't know quite exactly. There's a couple of things that I definitely want to touch upon, but let's start a little bit with the basics for you, because we talked a lot in the past, and one of the things that you've also been talking about is that in your entire life you've always been really competitive, and you told me that now that you are focusing on the streamer life over the esports life, you're focusing a lot also on paddle tennis, which I
Yeah,
just
exactly.
found out is a thing. So it's not table tennis, but a mix between squash and tennis, right?
Yep.
Okay, so with all tell me a little bit about your competitive background before you even
Ooh.
started with esports. Like, how did that look for you growing up?
I mean, as you said, right? I've been pretty much competing with everything I've done growing up. Obviously, when you're young, pretty much everybody plays football in Europe, at least Sweden. So growing up, I always played football and tennis, and I was competing with that. I played tennis for 11 years, I think, and started competing a lot with that after playing for a few years. So I pretty much grew up trying to go pro in tennis. And by the time I reached gymnasium, I kind of got bored, I guess, after playing for 11 years. And because I reached a point where it wasn't enough just playing 5 to 7 hours a week. I needed to up my hours by at least double, right? And I wasn't ready for that commitment because I was already starting to feel that I wouldn't do that hard of a commitment, right? I wouldn't dedicate my
Yeah.
entire life
How
for
good
it.
were you?
So I mean, I was good.
But
But
okay, did you play in the national level? Like,
I mean,
what was the level that you were playing at?
it's very competitive even at younger ages, right? So I was top 100 in my age, which doesn't say a lot, right? But I wasn't I wasn't one of the best. I wasn't playing in the national team, but I had a lot of potential. My dad kind of still believes that if I wanted to, I could. I mean, probably go pro still, just because I guess I have talent. But I was really good. But I was also the biggest flamer or rager ever when I played tennis. Believe it or not. Um, and then yeah, I mean, I started playing league after that in gymnasium. I was also there. It was the same, right? I really wanted to compete. I found the sport that way. I tried to go pro in league, I guess, but ended up quitting that game after playing for 3 years or something. It was the same. I didn't reach the level I wanted, and I got bored after playing for 3 4 years, and then we moved over to HOTS.
Yeah, like Pirates in Pajamas back then. I think the first time that we two met was actually in Prague, where you guys came over with the entire squad and were mainly watching. So, how did you get into a competitive aspect for Heroes, or how did that start? I mean, obviously, as you say, you had a competitive drive from the get-go, but once that you discovered, okay, I want to be competitive in that game too, what were your steps? Like, where did you play? Who did you play with? And how did you end up then also joining a big team like Fnatic and form that squad that made it all the way to BlizzCon, win the mid-season brawl? Tell me a little bit about that, how that journey looked like for you.
So yeah, the reason I got into Heroes of the Storm is because I heard it from a friend, Happy Thermia, if you remember.
Hmm.
He played in Alternate back in the days, I think. So yeah, like I heard from him that he was playing this game and like he was going pro, right? And he was living in a gaming house and everything. And he moved from League, and like he was okay in League. So when he made that transition and he went pro, like right away, I got really motivated and I tried the game out and I fell in love with it right away because it was, so paced and fast. And more team play coordinated and whatnot. So I started playing, and I started playing at a really high level right away. As I got to play, like just after a few weeks, I got to play with him. And back at the time, it was like AAA, and there was some teams there that I got to scream right away with like Lotus and Happy and Vipelino at the time, Smexia, I think. So yeah, like I got to some fairly known names back then. I got to play with them right away, right? I started playing for a while. And then I think it was actually kind of funny as well because like after playing the game for like 2 months or something, I kind of decided to not go for HOTS just because there was no money in the game. There was no tournaments yet, pretty much. So I went back to League, tried to play League for a few months, and by that time, when I was gone, like all the players that I have started playing with in HOTS, right, they all started joining teams. So like Shadowmare, which was a friend of mine, they joined Rockcat. Breeze and the Booby, I guess, that I started to know a bit, joined Navi, I think. My friend was in Alternate. So like at that time I was like, oh man, what have I done? Oh shit. And then after a while I went back to HOTS, right, and formed the Swedish team. And then there's all these open qualifiers. So lucky we managed to clutch a spot in the first European Championship, I guess, Prague. And from there on, I guess it just snowballed.
So how did you end up in Fnatic? Like, how was that? Like, of course, you had the Swedish connection with some of the players, and I mean, especially in Sweden, Fnatic is a huge deal, and for, I guess, a lot of you guys growing up, a bit of a dream playing for them too. But how did that actually come to pass?
Yeah, so that was the thing, right? Like, when we got to our first LAN event, sure, we didn't do amazing. We got shit stomped in the tournament, but during the event, we got to talk a lot with Fnatic. And at the time, that was Breeze and Wooby. So we got pretty good friends with them. And then as we got home from Prague, they were looking at replacements, right? So the LPL league started for the first time, which is like in-house pro division. So when that started, I got to, like not only talk with like Breeze and those players, right, that I was trying to, like poach or try to put in a good word for myself. I also got to play with them and actually show them, like, this is what I got, this is what I have, and I was shot calling and I was rank 1 in that league.
And they still took you.
What do you mean? What? Okay, so yeah, I was rank 1 in the league. I was shot calling every single game, and yada yada yada, right? And then I got a tryout for Fnatic, and I was pretty much locked in right away. And then we were still missing support, so then I like really vouched for Smexy. We tried Smexy, and then we ended up with Smexy as well. And yeah, from there on it was just, like eventually I became the team captain.
Talk me actually through that a little bit, because you joined in as the newer member, but as you just said, eventually you become the captain of the team, you are the shot caller of the team, and you're the one who has a lot of pressure on his shoulders as well when it comes to performing as a leader. How did you move into that role? How did it happen?
I might be wrong, but I think Breeze was was the captain for whatever captain means at the time. And like after a while, right, like I'm pretty sure like he just wanted me to be it because it felt more natural. Because like I am very straightforward, like I'm very vocal, and I also like to do like all the media shit, which he doesn't like to do. So it just felt like natural from his perspective, I guess. And like me coming in, I'm doing good. I'm on top of the world. I'm feeling confident. Like for me, it was, like I was super happy to get that position offered. And then as I got it, like I stayed as it. But yeah, then again, right, captain means whatever a team wants captain to mean. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
How did that all change for you? Because you guys were, especially after the final form of Fnatic, so to say, formed, you guys were insanely successful. You made it to a BlizzCon several times. You had great success against the Koreans there. You were able to win the mid-season brawl in Sweden as well, which was, of course, like a huge moment too. But then towards the end, before you left and you joined Roll20, basically the entire story from you was that you were burned out a bit. There was so much that, like, a huge toll that the entire time took. So can you just lead me a little bit through how that gradually built up and when you realized, okay, I'm actually burning out here, I need a change?
I mean, there's always gonna be problems in teams, right? And everybody's always gonna have different opinions. But it just reached a point where I felt like I was doing too much. And yeah, after a while, it just took a toll on me because I'm very, very, very competitive, right? As we've been talking about. So when things aren't going right, it doesn't matter if we're almost the best team in the world. If there's things we can improve, I want to improve those things. And it's for the reason that I want to be the best in the world. So even though we were very good, we were pretty much like winning 90% of our scrims, I still saw every single game a lot of things we could improve. So, like I was always trying to be the teacher, making sure that we are improving. Like no matter if we're stomping everything, we can still improve our rotations. We can still get better at this because we're not executing as flawlessly and whatnot. So it just reached a point, that I was pretty much overworking. Should have probably taken it a bit slow there in the middle when we were like doing so good. Because it also reaches a point, right, where I'm just that little bitch boy that is never happy, and I just want to keep going and never really satisfied. I think at one point Booby even called me out as a perfectionist because, yeah, like as I'm mentioning, I really wanted to improve everything further, even though we were already so successful, we were already doing so good. But yeah, so as I worked too much, I guess, and I reached a point where I got burnt out from that.
Let me actually come into that with one question, because Heroes is a game where coaches are just now starting to become a bit more of a thing. I mean, most of the time teams had a coach for a long time, but as I said in the past, most of these coaches are just glorified water boys that write down drafts and stuff.
Yeah.
There are some coaches that actually do proper work and that are really helping their teams. We had a couple on this show here as well. But the term coach within Heroes was basically just an idea of what people in the long run wanted to have, which they've seen in other games, but it wasn't quite on that level. So with the absence of actual coaches, we had guys like you that formed a team and took all over these responsibilities. And I mean, at the time when all of this happens, a lot of you guys are insanely young. I mean, Breeze starts when he's like 15, 16 years old. Some of you are a little bit older. Do you feel that now, with a few years in between and with the knowledge that you have with how that grew, you would do things a little bit different in hindsight? Would you make changes there? Is that something where you feel, looking back at it, that inexperience back then maybe caused some of the problems that could be avoided?
Oh, of course. Like obviously, there's a lot I took from my departure and the new constellations of rosters and everything, because like the main problem was that we weren't really talking about our problems, and that's something, right? Like, how are you supposed to improve your problems or change something if you're not talking about it? Like, how do I know? But obviously, there were some active problems and some problems we did talk about that, like, I did differently. But then again, right? Like, everybody had problems. Like, nobody was flawless. So hindsight, like, sure, there was a lot we could have changed. I could have changed, and it maybe would have been a different outcome. But like after playing with each other for almost 2 years, I think, like obviously, like it's not weird that people get like a bit tired of each other, right? And especially when there's problems and whatnot. But yeah, to simplify the question, like to answer, sure, I would have done a few things differently.
What do you actually feel the role of a coach within a MOBA should be? Because there's always these two approaches, right? First of all, there's a question, if there are internal conflicts, is that something that the team itself should talk about, or do you need a person that comes in from the outside that, let's say, people can, for example, be mad at without impacting it impacting the team spirit? Let's say, for example, you have an issue with a player, you can bring it to an outsider, in that sense a coach, that then addresses the team. So if there is any kind of animosity, it's towards the coach, not towards you as a person, and that could help the team itself. Or do you feel that a coach should be more in the role where he has advanced knowledge about something, is maybe able to shape the drafts better or show issues within the game? Like, where do you fall down this? Because I've heard both of them statements made, both of the arguments, in your personal opinion, what's the more important issue to address?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I would say both, right? But if I only get to choose one side, then I would say, like, being more of the mental coach, not necessarily helping out as much with the game, because especially in our unit, right? Like back in Fnatic, we were already so good at that. What we needed help was making sure that things were kept professional, things were like running smooth and like efficient, I guess, and then like mental focus, straight up, right? Like attitude and so on. So I would have liked to see like a coach, as in a mental coach in this case. But obviously, there's some teams that needs more help from an in-game perspective, where they need drafting help. They need to understand how to play the game. They need to learn how to play the game. But as I said, like, we didn't have problems with that. We had problems on more individual levels, I guess, and just mentality stuff.
So coming back to the pressure in general that all of this like caused, you have a long-term girlfriend, and I was always curious, like how exactly, if that was a help or if that was more of a problem for you being in that relationship. Problem in the sense that it added another layer of stress to you because, as we talked about, it's really difficult for you. Like your time schedule as a person in esports is very, very different from the time schedule of everyone else that has, like, let's say, a normal 9 to 5 job or something that at least has a similar schedule. So was that something that was for you a way how you could get a break? Or was it also sometimes really difficult to make that work on top of the trouble that you already had, making the team work and making those hours within esports work?
I mean, I think it goes both ways really here, like, because there was moments where I really needed the support from an outside, from somebody from the outside, right? So having my girlfriend there, like, means a lot and has helped me a lot throughout these years. But it was also pretty rough, especially for her, I guess, because, like, there would be days where I'm really grumpy after we end our scrim blocks and so on, and everything I'm thinking of for the rest of the day when I'm supposed to spend it with her. It's just like the drafts or the arguments we had and so on. But I mean, for sure, I'm really grateful for having her. She is also very understanding of this type of lifestyle because she works her ass off every day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. because they have a horse farm or like, not a horse farm, but like they have 7 horses and she's like competing with horses and so on. So as much as it's not the same, like it's the same in the sense that she knows how stressful it can be and how much effort you have to put in, and that you pretty much sacrifice your entire life dedicating it to this one thing. So yeah.
So now that you focus, like now that you left the competitive edge of the game and you started focusing more on streaming, is there a noticeable shift for you? Is there something where you see, okay, like the time that you use, you can use it differently and that you have more time for these things now?
Yeah, for sure. As I pretty much touched on, right? Like the part where you pretty much dedicate your life to it. So for the past 3 years of me playing competitive, like if my friends call me on a Friday and they ask me, "Hey man, wanna go out today?" I could never say yes. So things like this has changed a lot, right? Like right now, I have a lot of free time. I have as much free time as I want because I decide my schedule. I decide how much effort or like how much time I want to put into it. So that's the first like notable change, right? That I'm free as a bird pretty much, and I just do what I do on my terms, which feels amazing. Because as I said, like during the past half year and so on, like I was really burnt out. I wasn't enjoying playing the game. I was really demotivated. So like every day was a struggle for me, every day was a fight. But now I'm really happy again. I'm starting to come back to the Quack I want to be. I've always been. I'm happy all the time. So I mean, yeah, for sure, I needed this break, and I'm really happy that I decided to take it now, because it was hard for me to step away from competitive. Before I actually joined Roll20, I was already thinking about leaving Fnatic afterwards 2017 BlizzCon. But like stepping away from that position, it didn't, like I don't know. I wouldn't say I was scared, right? But there's a safety, right? When we are at that level, and I just don't wanna blow it away. Like just power through it, like you have you have a lot of like, even if it's not working as I wanted it to,
Mm-hmm.
the result was there, and we were doing great. We were one of the best teams in the world, and everything. So I didn't just want to step away from it, right? Like, because you can't take it for granted. So I decided to keep going, which just ended up in me straight up becoming the problem eventually, right? When I started straight up failing in my obligations,
Mm-hmm.
and I got demotivated, and I wasn't enjoying the game, and yada yada yada, right? Um, and then still after that, I thought just a team change would be enough of a change, a setback, and a reset for me to, keep going. Because once again, I don't want to leave the competitive scene, but in my current situation, I really needed to, and I should have done it earlier. But once again, I kind of said to myself like this: if this doesn't work out either, then I really need to take this break. But I thought it would be enough for just changing team, start fresh, start over, try to
I
do things differently, try to do things right.
I kind of can
But
relate to
yeah,
that. Like in Warcraft 3, I had a very similar situation where I just started studying and I was the manager of 4 Kings back then. And one of the big problems that we had, it was an international team, so you had to always shift to the different time zones and stuff. So back then it ate up all my time and I still needed it for university. And then I decided, and I was like thinking, okay, I'm gonna switch teams. I'm gonna leave 4 Kings, even though we are winning everything. I'm
mm,
gonna join Mouse Sports because they're a German team, so I am stuck in one time zone. I can talk German to those people. It's gonna be much easier. Gonna have to invest much less time. And then my first move coming into the team was getting 3 international players, which put me back into the old problem just because of that competitive drive. So with that experience from myself, I'm wondering if when you started to change the team, if you just found yourself in basically the same spot again, where all of a sudden you said, okay, I'm going to take it maybe a little bit easier now, but then again, you found yourself in a position where you just started pushing and pushing and pushing again and trying to make that happen. Was that something you can relate to?
for sure. Like, obviously, like joining the new team, like in the beginning, it was just about getting to know everybody, starting fresh, trying to figure out what everybody wants and how to make everybody happy, right?
Hmm.
And try to really work harder as a team, and like not be the dictator of the team, as I kind of became in Fnatic, I guess. But then it just reached a point where I am that competitive that if people aren't doing what they're supposed to do, I'm not gonna let it go. Like, I will tell you, like, you need to work on this. We need to work on this. We're in the same boat, man. Like, we have to fix this. I'm not saying this because I want to be a douchebag. I'm saying this because this is hurting our, like, our effort, our play, and whatnot. So I just reached a point in Roll20 as well, where it's like I literally got into the same position because I wasn't satisfied with being worst in the league or in the middle of the pack. So I still wanted to achieve more, even that wasn't the case here. So then it became even more of a burnout, right? Because imagine coming from being one of the best in the world into being like, oh, he's just a player in HEC.
Mm.
So that wasn't something I was comfortable with, and I worked my ass off to try to change that as well with the Roll20 unit. But I have to say that teams and players have gotten a lot better from when I started making my appearance in the scene, I guess.
Uh-huh.
So it is a bit harder this time around. I am not the one man army when it comes to shot calling drafting. Um, and yeah, like it needed a lot more teamwork for us to get further, sadly. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to touch on that too much, right? Like, I don't want to sell anybody out. I don't want to talk badly about anybody. But yeah, I'm really happy right now with moving on. Who knows? Maybe I'll be back. Who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe I won't.
So you said you don't want to really talking about any specifics here in terms of players, but can you give me a general idea of what maybe surprised you the most or what you struggled with
Oh,
the most
sure,
coming from Fnatic moving to a different
sure.
team? What was the biggest challenge?
I guess my expectations were way too high, right? Coming from world level
Hmm.
to just, I mean, HEC team in Europe. So my expectations were a bit too high, I guess, because I thought there would be a straight up better standard when it comes to communication, game understanding.
Hmm.
I can't say that like mechanics weren't really lacking, but just in my opinion, like what has been like controlling this game for the past 2-3 years, is literally teamwork and game sense and drafting, right? But game sense drafting is kind of hand in hand. Sure, you need to have good mechanics. You need to be at a certain level to even play competitive, play professionally. So that should also just be a standard. So what surprised me the most was the lack of game sense and the lack of communication, and it's something I mentioned like pretty much the first day I started playing with them, and it's something I've been working on for the entire duration I was there. So yeah, I hope they actually take something from that and keep working on that if they want to go far the next year, because I don't think the players are bad. I think some players are even like at a really good level comparing to others in Europe, but there are a lot of things lacking.
Have you ever considered becoming a coach yourself? Was that ever a
Yes.
thought process?
I
Why
mean, a
did you
lot of
decide
people
against
have.
it?
I mean, a lot of people have asked. Um, I mean, especially fans, right? But it's something that I don't want to jump straight into, right? Like how even like no matter how much a team could gain from that, and like I think it would actually be really fun as well. I'm not in a position where I just want to dive into work right now. Right now, I'm focusing on building my own brand and just streaming because it's something I really enjoy. I'm really motivated to do it, and as I said, like there's no pressure because I decide everything. Like if I don't want to stream that day, I don't have to stream that day, and this is the type of content I want to do. No worries, then I do that content. So like right now, I'm just chilling. I'm trying to build my own brand, and I'm just making sure that I'm in a healthy state, I guess, because I get to do what I want.
Yeah. I want to come back to one point because you talked a lot about the pressure. You talked about the situation that you ended up in with Fnatic, where you felt you became a bit of a dictator too, where your goals not necessarily matched what the team was thinking, where it caused a little bit of
I don't want to
problems.
say that's not what I meant if it came out
Okay.
like that. Not necessarily that people didn't have the same goals, right? But I felt like everybody has the same goal, right? But everybody wasn't showing it in like the way I would have hoped it, right? Because
Okay.
obviously, like if we finished second the first BlizzCon, and we could put in so much more effort the next year, that's what I'm expecting. That's what I want to change
Okay.
going into the next year. So yeah, like it's important that this becomes right, I guess. But
Yeah, no, I absolutely understand. You're like, sorry if I misunderstood that a bit. But one of the criticism that you specifically as a player have always faced from mostly community perspective was hero pool issues, for example, where people are saying like, hey, he
for
might
sure.
have the hero pool, but he only has a couple of heroes where he really is on the highest level, and everything else might be a liability. How much did that impact you that that idea came from the outside? How much do you feel was that really true? Like, can you talk me a little bit through how you dealt with that and how you
Uh,
felt about those
I mean,
statements?
I would say it's true for sure to a certain extent, and I would say it affected my team more than me
Hmm.
because it just became one of those things, right? That like I wasn't fixing it, right? Like I wasn't fixing the problem because I didn't see it as a big problem, not the
Yeah.
problem that was the most important at least. No matter what, right? Like I should have worked on that. I should have showed my team that I was working on it, and so on. So that's like something I would have changed, right? Like I would have made sure to practice harder and like working on my hero pool because that was the most. I mean, that was the thing that my teammates, was trying to help me with the most and trying to address as a problem the most from my perspective.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's something I would have done differently for sure. But at the time, um, as much as it like kind of obviously like it hurt our drafts a little bit, we were pretty much winning everything at the time
Hmm.
due to the fact, like due to the how I drafted,
Yeah.
because there was no reason to draft differently because we were winning everything just by getting the strong core picks and then just I mean I'm not gonna explain how to draft right now, but like back in the days, like it was like it was enough, right? But like obviously when we're already winning everything um, with pretty much playing the same two or three play styles, then we should have moved on and started exploring new things, right? Which was something that my team wanted to do, but I got kind of stubborn on like the perfectionist part where
Yeah.
yeah, like even though but like because I saw it like you can see it two ways, right? I saw it in the way that sure we're pretty much playing the same same style, kind of same compositions with some different picks here and there. But we're still not playing it, like close to like the full potential. Like even though we're stomping with 2 levels, we could be stomping this with 3 levels. So when we're not even playing the macro game clean, even though we pretty much played the same comp 30 times, right? I focus more on like reaching perfection rather than, okay, we're already winning, we're winning convincingly, so we can move on to something else. And that's something I should have, right, changed, because as I said, like in the end, it was something that hurt my teammates, because they got bored of playing the same play style and they wanted to try new things, but I was very stubborn and like hung up on that, because it was what I thought was enough to like win to get us far, which in a sense like I was right, but yeah, I do completely understand them, hindsight, and that we should have moved on and tried different things when we're already winning everything by playing like that.
I mean, you could see the other extreme once you left, because the Fnatic that came out of that, the first thing they did within the first few weeks is they went crazy. They went everywhere.
Sure.
All of a sudden, every hero was for a game. And they had mixed results with that. I mean, you could really see that some of those ideas were absolutely genius and brought a couple of heroes into the meta that really worked and that others picked up. At the same time, though, it was maybe a little bit too far overboard. So I think a happy medium between the two approaches would have been maybe the best.
I think that was the problem, though, right? Where it's like they tried everything all of a sudden, and they ended up like overdoing it. But as you said, there were some things that were just genius. And they reached a point where like everybody was scared of drafting against them, just because like the diversity and so on, which at the time was what my team wanted to start changing, right? Like we were already so fucking dominant playing the standard meta, so we should move on and figure out new strategies and figure out cheesy comps and whatnot.
Yeah. So the entire journey, the one aspect that I really want to touch to is talk me through a little bit how you talked a bit about your girlfriend, about the support that you got, how that was always sometimes maybe a bit stressful to make it work, but that she was very understanding, that she was a safe haven there. Talk to me a little bit about how your parents dealt with this entire setup. And maybe in that aspect also, do you feel as a career in esports is more accepted within Sweden as a country as other countries? Because for me personally, I always said Sweden is the Korea of Europe, because it's amazing how many great players come out of Sweden in every single game that you see, and also how much esports is accepted within the culture. I mean, even your major newspaper regularly runs articles about esports. Is that something that you feel helped also making your parents understand this entire environment, or were they from the beginning absolutely on board?
So yeah, I would agree that Sweden is probably one of the countries, most understanding countries in Europe when it comes to esport. But I think it also has a lot to do with like every kid in Sweden right now, cause since Sweden is a pretty wealthy country, like they grow up with computers. So like already there, like playing a lot of computer games and whatnot, it's just becoming the norm. Like nowadays, like literally every single kid is playing Fortnite, and no parents has a problem with it, and so on. But back when I started, like obviously my parents weren't too happy, because I was spending too much time in front of the computer just playing games with my friends, and I was still studying. So for starters, they were really worried. They pretty much like almost gave up, right? Because they tried to pick on me and tell me, "Yo, school is important. You have to focus on that first, yada yada." But then, like every parent, right? Every parent is gonna be worried in this situation. Is completely normal.
You finished school, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was
I mean,
that?
okay, it's pretty hard to explain. But I finished school, but I didn't get a complete grade. But like 1 or 2 years later, I like finished those grades in something that you call convux, which is like, yeah, you basically adult school. You like finish stuff you didn't finish. So there was a few
Hiccups?
what is it called? Yeah, there was 2 or 3 I had to do over, basically, like over like a month or something. You do a course, right?
Okay.
to finish it.
Yeah, I'm
So
basically
I did finish school, but I didn't get the complete grade, so I had to go to Comvux, as it's called in
okay.
Sweden.
Yeah, I'm basically
To-
asking because I know that Breeze took that gap year back then and then decided to stay with it because his parents originally told him, listen, you have a year. If you can make it
yeah.
work within a year, you can go. But like if it turns out that after a year you're nowhere near where you want to be and that it doesn't work out for you, then you have to go back to school. So that's where the question came from. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. You said your parents were a little bit worried, but
Yeah, so obviously they were worried like any parent should be, and when I'm spending most of my times playing video games instead of studying and my grades aren't great. But yeah, once like they started realizing the reality of it, meaning like I was getting paid to fly to different countries to play tournaments, and I was actually getting money. Like we joined Fnatic, which from there on like it actually took a turn, both because we became so successful, we became so strong, so the money started coming in, but there was also the safety of like having a monthly income from Fnatic. So at that point, my parents got into esport as I started traveling around the world, and as the money started coming in as well, right? Like they didn't have too much to say about it, and they started to become happy and started to support my career just because like they were worried, right? But at the point where they didn't have to worry anymore, they gave me their full support, pretty much.
how does it look right now? Like how did they take it when you like did you talk to them about your career in general? Did you talk with them when you said, "Hey, I'm making the decision to leave this?" And how did they react to it? Is it something where they say, "Okay, do that streamer life," or do they, for example, try and push you to go to university or just like to have something outside of the streaming?
I mean, my dad is like me, like very realistic. So I mean, I've been talking a lot for the past like year, half a year, right? As I started getting burnt out and whatnot, like I've been talking to him a lot, and he's telling me to power through. But like obviously, if I'm not happy, then I have to consider like quitting or changing team or whatever. Um, but he just told me like at the same time he's telling me, right, like you don't know for how long like hot is gonna be a thing. You don't know for how long you're gonna be at this peak or whatever, right? So you should try to seize the moment. Like he don't want to uh like force me to keep going,
Yeah,
but at the
yeah.
same time he wants me to realize that this might be a once in a lifetime opportunity. So even if it feels rough right now, it might be worth just powering through, right?
Hmm.
Which is what I did, and like I tried it, right, and now it reached a point where I want to quit. So like he completely supports that as well. Then again, as he is pretty like realistic, we have been talking about, right, like I want to do this for X amount. If it doesn't work out, if I'm not making money after half a year, right, or whatever, then obviously I might have to consider something else, maybe going back to study or getting a normal job or a half-time job. Because I cannot sit all days playing video games if I'm not making money in the end. But for starters, like we have a pretty good idea, and I guess like um, time frame that like I feel that I can do this without having to think about money at all. But after, as I said, like half a year or something, if I'm not even making any money, then obviously I'll have to reconsider
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
So with your streaming right now, is the idea to only focus, I mean, for now you're playing Heroes, but is the idea to eventually branch out a little bit, see if you find another game where you can be at least semi-competitive? I mean, Blizzard just renouncing Warcraft Reforged, for example. There's other MOBAs that will probably be announced in the future. You talked about Fortnite. Is the ambition to now establish yourself with Heroes and then see if eventually you branch out? Or do you say, like, Heroes is the game that I'm going to stream. If at any point the viewers aren't there anymore to support that stream, that also means that I'm going to stop?
So obviously, my first thought was to stream 5 times per week, streaming 4 times Heroes, and then one day whatever I want, just to figure out, like if there's any other games I really enjoy playing, and if there's, like somewhat decent support coming in, even when I'm streaming different games. So yeah, like the plan is to like not necessarily branch out, but like if I feel like playing a different game one day, I'm gonna do that. But I was actually looking a bit at going into like competitive in Realm Royale,
Hmm.
but I don't know what they did to that game. It's completely dead now, so that's not something I'm trying anymore.
I looked it up the other day because I know a couple of guys that were really excited about it, and I can't even find it anymore on like the games that are being streamed. It's just completely
Yeah,
disappeared.
it's pretty sad because it was actually. I mean, yeah, I don't want to talk about too much about that either, right? But like, it had potential. Somehow they managed to fuck everything up, and it didn't really get anywhere.
Yeah.
But me and Makke from, I mean, Tricked back then. I'm not sure what team he will be joining this next split, but we were playing like a lot every single day, and I was really enjoying that game. So that was something for sure that I wanted to start getting into. But right now, I'm focusing a lot on HOTS because that's where I built a name. That's where I have my fans.
Hmm.
That's where I can provide the best content. But at the same time, I am looking to play whatever I want with friends if I feel like it.
What's your actual opinion on especially Hero League right now? Because there's like two aspects to it. Like back in one of the main reasons were that a lot of people back then didn't practice within Hero League outside of the 4 to 8 to 10 hour scrims that they had each day was that people were saying they can't really take anything from playing Hero League, that it was also for a lot of them pretty boring, and that's why a lot of the top players even just didn't commit any time to playing on their own. And then you saw it on the streamer level where to an extent people got frustrated it didn't stream. Is that anything that like worries you? Do you feel that Hero League as a mode is now in a much better spot, or where do you feel like the status is right now?
I mean, I've never really been bitching about it on Twitter, right? As a lot of pro players do, especially not during the time I was a pro player.
Hmm.
Um, but I would say that the Hero League is in a pretty bad state,
Okay.
just for the reason of how easily it is to get like Master and Grandmaster, and the fact that the way you get Grander is by grinding the shit out of the game.
Yeah.
Like, I can't get my Grandmaster if I play 100 games and I go like 75-25, right? But if I play 800 games and I have 42% win rate, I can get Grandmaster. And that's not something I enjoy with the game.
Mhm.
I think, like the way you're gaining points is just wrong in that sense. Like, you shouldn't be able to get the highest ranking in the game with a negative win rate.
Mhm.
And yeah, like every season, it just gets more and more. I don't know the word in English, but I guess inflated. Like, there's just more and
Yeah.
more people getting master that shouldn't be master. So like, there's people that has been for several seasons in a row. They have gotten, like they're hard stack diamond something, diamond 3, 600 games, and then the next season they get master 1K because they had good placements. They went 8-2 or 9-1, and then they get master 1K, but they have never reached master 1K in their career. So all of a sudden, like every new season, there just comes more and more people to master, which is supposed to be a really prestigeful rank, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's supposed to mean something, especially grandmaster. But sadly for me, it doesn't due to these reasons. Like, sure, to somebody that is gold, obviously grandmaster still means a lot. And I'm trying to explain that I don't see grandmaster as nothing because I am a pro player, right? Or because I was a pro player. I see it's not worth anything due to these reasons of
Mhm.
how easy it is to obtain. And it's just like time consuming. It's not necessarily skill consuming. So I think the overall level of Hero League is in a bad state due to this. Because yeah, every season there's just more and more people getting master for free. So the level isn't even rising either.
Do you still enjoy it though? Like, I mean, there is obviously a problem, and I mean, you talked about that right now, but is it still something that when you play the game on stream where you think, okay, I'm having fun here? Is that mainly then because of your audience that you can interact with, or do you feel that there need to be some serious changes in order to make sure that people are not gonna just give up on it?
I mean, it's also something I talk to a bit on stream, right? Like, as I said, like, I don't usually want to bitch, but like sometimes there's just these moments where I just look like 8 games in a row or 5 games in a row. The like average of the like how the games are played out is, in my opinion, at a plat level.
Mhm.
And maybe this is again like because I have too high expectations, and I'm actually coming from a competitive standpoint where my greatest attribute has always been like game sense and shot calling, right? So maybe it's not fair to an extent, but there should still be a standard. Like, once again, there should still be a standard of what is master. And the standard of master is so freaking low in this game. So it's fun to play Hero League sometimes, but there's gonna be those days where, so I don't care if I'm necessarily losing. Like, obviously it's more fun winning, but I don't necessarily care if I'm losing if I feel that the enemy team is actually doing something good. But when people are just bad, excuse my toxic behavior here, at the game, then
That's okay. You can be toxic here.
I don't know.
We're not on ban.
So yeah, I don't know actually. Like, I enjoy it still a lot now because it's like the first time I'm actually grinding solo queue for several seasons. But now I have more ambitions of getting Grandmaster, and I have ambition of doing different things on stream for educational purpose. So for me, it's just like content, right? And it becomes fun pretty much regardless. Like, the only time it isn't fun is when I'm sucking. So I wouldn't say that has anything to do with the game. That's just me having a bad day.
How do you maneuver the like the balance between, on one hand, you want to play well and you want to win because you have that competitive drive we talked about earlier, even if you're not in a league or in a tournament, but you still have ambitions to win the game. But at the same time, you want to be entertaining because, as we all know, when you're, for example, streaming, people want you to lock in that gas low. People want you to play a certain style. Is that something that you pick up to an extent? How much do you feel that is an issue? Like, how do you deal with that?
Right now, like, I've actually gotten pretty good at that, because before I really struggled when streaming because I was actually like so garbage when I was streaming comparison to when I was just like playing alone, just because my focus just wasn't there all the time, right? Like, I'm focusing on my other screen, I'm reading questions mid-game, I'm losing map awareness due to that. And I'm like, like, in some sense, there's always pressure because I want to perform. I want to show my viewers what I can do, right? But yeah, it has reached a point where I'm just out there doing me, and I'm also focusing a lot more on just team fighting because that's how you win solo queue. You don't play macro for shit. So I'm starting to learn both how to do it on stream. So actually, like, chat, I'm gonna talk to you soon, and then I just focus, which is something I couldn't never do before. So I'm actually pretty good at solo queue right now, and I've watched Alex a lot, I watch Aelia a lot, and the way to win solo queue is just picking 1v9 heroes and just non-stop brawling. So while I want to play smart and win, like, I want to push my leads strategically, no risk, high reward kind of style, that doesn't work in solo queue. So I've kind of like shipped that aside and just go full smork. But I try to explain all the time, right, like what we should be doing and so on. So I still keep the educational content at the same time as I'm still delivering on a mechanical level, and I'm actually winning games. So I'm pretty, I'm in a good state when it comes to how I stream like that.
Okay. I want to end the interview on one last question. Lead me a little bit through winning mid-season brawl in Sweden, in front of your family, in your home country. How did you guys approach the tournament, especially given that it was in Sweden, you had a shot there? And how nervous were you guys when you entered the grand final, when you had that crowd in front of you? How did it feel when you heard people just yell your names the entire time? Like, lead me a little bit through that, since I still assume it's one of the high points of your career here.
Like, honestly, like, as much as it's a bit arrogant, but I don't actually remember. Like, like, I've won too much. No, I'm just joking. No, but like, yeah, I actually don't remember. Like, obviously, like, it was insanely hype. It was also like you were also insanely nervous, but like, no matter what tournament.
Wait.
Yeah.
You're sitting here and say you can't remember winning that tournament. What can you remember? What's like a memory where you say that will stick with me forever? I just assumed it would be winning in your home country mid-season brawl. But if you can't remember that, what is it that QuackNiix, when he thinks back on his career, is just like, that was amazing, that was the best shit ever?
2016 BlizzCon. It was midday. Fnatic up against MVP Black. The Titans from Korea.
Who casted that game? Like, I remember that.
Khaldor Yehao. Boom. This is the moment I remember. Because we go into the tournament, right, as kind of a fluke. We shouldn't even have been at BlizzCon. The only reason we got to BlizzCon was because at the time Misfits fucked up and we won a game that got us there. So like going in, like there was, I mean, there's pressure, right? We're on the big stage.
Wasn't that the game where wasn't it the qualification at Gamescom where Misfits had to play like 13 games in a row or something?
The details doesn't matter. We went there, we conquered, okay?
Okay, yeah, you did. You
Okay.
dominated,
Moving
you
on.
qualified, and yeah, Bliss.
Yeah, as I was saying. So yeah, there was the semifinals versus MVP Black at the point, which hadn't lost an international game ever, if I remember correctly. And they were like so dominant in Korea. They were so dominant around the world, right? They were the big favorite going into the tournament. And we come there, like NA was out as well, so we were the hope from the West, and everybody was cheering us on. We like, I don't know, it was just so fucking hype, right? Like, so I'm trying to shorten down the story, but the story is so good.
No, you go. And I actually like have a couple of like memories of that story too. So I'm wondering what you're going to tell me right now.
Okay, but we're just actually gonna skip to the game, like, because that's the biggest memory that I'm never gonna forget.
Okay, before you start that, I want to set the stage though, because I remember that too, and I talked to you guys before the tournament, and I remember vividly how basically all of you walked in calm as a cucumber, at least to the outside. You might have been nervous inside, but all of you said like, Khaldor, you ready for a 0-3 stomp? Because we're not going to win a map. That's how that started.
Okay, so yeah, so this was the thing, right? Like, we were already super fucking happy. We managed to get that far in the tournament. So by the time we were about to go up against the best in the world, the favorites of the tournament, the unbeaten Koreans, we were like, okay, boys, we're so fucking happy about this tournament. We did great. We don't have to care about what happens now. If we go down to MVP Black 0-3, who gives a fuck? Like, we should be happy about what we have accomplished here. So everybody went in with this mindset, being, like, really loosen up. Like, there was no pressure anymore. Like, we were already done with the tournament. Everything from now on is just a bonus. But at the same time, right, we weren't underestimating ourselves. So we still, I still told my team, right, but we can still win. Like, obviously, we're already happy. No matter what happens, we should be happy. But we know, and we have shown already, that we have the stronger meta. So we can still do it. So let's just go out there and do our best and see, right? So we go out there, and I don't remember what happened then. No, of course I do. Just don't remember the first game, but the moment we started winning, like we won the first game, we stand up and we're just screaming. We're so happy. Like, we didn't barely understand. Like, what happened? Did we actually just fucking win a game? So we're standing up, looking out into an ocean of people, and I don't know how many was, like there, watching
like
live.
5,000-6,000, yeah.
You see, a shit ton of people was there watching us live. So we're standing up, we're looking out to the ocean of people, and like everybody's standing up and like fucking going bananas, like, whoa, Fnatic! So yeah, like that was probably the wildest moment like of my career, because from there on, like, it just went out of control. Like, everybody was standing up and cheering us on and screaming. It was so fucking hype, and people were even like chanting my name specifically as we were drafting going into the next game. So I don't know, like, it was probably the best moment of my life, the hype and the unreal crowd, I guess.
I remember that Trimby told me afterwards that he was like telling you in the last, I think it was the final game that you guys played, give me Tracer, give me Tracer, give me Tracer, give me Tracer, and you didn't want to draft it. And then because he was so sure, you gave him Tracer, as far as I can remember.
It was Tyrande in the...
Was it Tyrande?
It was Tyrande, because we had practiced this draft on Braxis, do you remember? We had Medivh, Tyrande, Jaina, and the tank, and then like solo lane was whatever. Like, Wooby, you do you, you're great. So like that was like a cheese we had prepared, and it was pretty successful. But our Tyrande picks, I think, throughout the tournament hadn't really been working, and I think no, it was Medivh. Like, he wanted Medivh, right? But we had a variation without the Medivh, and I think Shrimpy was just like, give me Medivh, Quack, please, give me Medivh. And I was like still unsure. And then, you know, like before we lock in, I was like, okay, go Mediv. And then we went Mediv and we like completely stumped that game. And like, yeah, it was like, it wasn't like I didn't trust the pick, right? We had still been practicing with it, but I was just personally feeling something else. But he really wanted it, so we decided to go with it, and we ended up winning the series.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I remember that vividly. It was a great time. Good memories.
For sure.
It's also kind of fun seeing you being this excited about a game, because I thought that would have been Sweden, but then you're like, I don't even remember what happened.
I mean, I
what?
really. Oh yeah, I do remember Sweden. We finished last game with McDonald's draft, no?
Yeah, exactly. Sky Temple with the Chen.
Okay. I mean, okay, obviously it was fucking hype. Like, imagine winning World Championship is fucking hype, especially on the home turf.
And
That
you
was
got the
really
jump
fun.
animation designed after you because
Yeah.
of the jump that you had. Like, I know more about the tournament than you. What the hell's happening to you, dude?
I don't know, but like, oh yeah, that was fucking hype as well because it was in Sweden. We actually won the tournament, and it was like a, yeah, and it was a seven game finals as well, right? Like it was 3-3. We picked the McDonald's draft even though we had already played it. So Dignitas knew what was coming. We completely stomped the early game, and then we started screwing around, and it became really awkward. But somehow we managed to win the tournament. So good job, boys. You guys are beasts. Whoopi, Sweepy, Breeze, Smixy. Mwah.
All right. I think this is where we're going to end it, dude. Like, I was super fun talking to you, and I hope that you're going to do well with the streaming life now, too. So whatever you end up doing, a lot of success for that, and I'm sure we're going to keep in touch as well. Thanks for being on the show, man. It was a pleasure.
Same.
All right. That's it. And yeah, going to talk to you soon again. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And yeah, that's QuackNiix for you here, the duck himself. And we're going to see him a lot more on Twitch, of course. Alright, so much for the stories with Quack. Gotta say that even though it was a little bit monk-ass when he said he doesn't remember, at least initially, the mid-season brawl, was pretty cool to see how he still has like that vivid memory of his performance at BlizzCon against MVP Black and how all of that went. That was a pretty good one. Guys, again, if you liked the interview, then make sure that you hit that thumbs up button on YouTube and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it yet. Also, special shout out to everyone that supports the show and everything that I do in terms of content for esports on Patreon. Like, you guys rock. Thank you very, very much for the support that you give me there. And that's it for the day. Hope that you enjoyed the interview. Again, give the video a thumbs up. If you have any question, feel free to post them in the comments. And I'm going to see you guys soon with another episode of Coffee with Khaldor.